So one thing that you may have noticed over the past few weeks or perhaps even months is that I've been focusing my attention on some fragrances that I think are going to be amazing for the colder weather. I live in New Jersey. It has a tendency of getting very, very cold here, sometimes with below zero real feel Fahrenheit temperatures. Here we have a fragrance that I think is an amazing contender for the colder weather. This one by Alghabra is called Istanbul Soul. I'm really excited to give you my thoughts on this incensey, peppery, amber, and patchouli fragrance, so make sure to stay tuned. Now, before I begin today's episode and I tell you all about Istanbul Soul by Alghabra, a brand that I've covered in the past, but it's actually been a few years since I've touched upon this brand, and I really haven't covered anything new that they've put out as of late. I want to start things off by saying that if you're a fan of fragrance-related content, please do consider supporting the channel by subscribing to it. Hit the bell icon so you can be notified whenever I do upload future videos to the channel, and of course, I upload on a daily basis. And of course, give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, or if you took something of value from today's episode. It would really mean a lot to me. So this fragrance in particular, if you're interested in sampling it, because you know I don't typically recommend blind buys, even though I think this one is absolutely superb, you may sample it at maxaroma.com. That's where I acquired my bottle from. They are a discounter. They have some really, really good prices on some hard to find designer and niche fragrances. I personally know a lot of the people who work there, Hamed and Gazelle, who used to work there. Really down to earth, amazing people. And I've been using Max Aroma for so many years now. Have even done a couple of events at their warehouse. They're located in Long Island City. I personally love that because it feels like I get my packages overnight. And sometimes I do tend to be rather on the impatient side of things. Here we have a fragrance from a Turkish brand, and I've had the pleasure of visiting Istanbul several years ago, and it is beautiful. I am very impatient and I can't wait for the day when I return to Istanbul, because the people, the food, the culture, the ambiance, the weather, everything was amazing. And I have a few friends who have visited Istanbul as well, and they say the same things. They sing the same high praise. Here is a fragrance that is warm. It's ambery. There's tonka bean, guaiac wood. There's benzoin, a lot of benzoin actually. There's patchouli, spices, pepper, incense. You have so many amazing, deep, dense, warm, rich, and spicy ingredients. This is exactly the type of fragrance that comes to mind when I think of a wintertime gem. This is a fragrance where the more people that get their nose on it, the more popular this is going to become. That is the only reason why this fragrance is not spoken about in the same breath as fragrances from houses like Creed and Xerjoff, because this is, or has a tendency to fly somewhat under the radar. In any case, I'm excited to give you my thoughts on the smell. Let's start things off with the presentation. Now, the first thing you'll notice about this fragrance is that deep, warm, rich, spicy amber accord that is residing in the heart of this fragrance. And it actually does smell very strongly of benzoin. And the reason I say that is because initially it reminded me of a fragrance by the brand Evanescence, and they do have a benzoin-based fragrance that I've actually reviewed on this channel. And it's a fragrance comprised entirely of base notes, and the main note is benzoin. And as soon as I smelled this, I said, there's that dark, deep, rich, sensual, exotic, slightly smoky characteristic that one gets from the note of benzoin. For those of you who don't know, benzoin has a tendency of being on the vanillic side of things a little bit, but also there's a medicinal overtone, very syrupy, and it also almost has like a smoky personality to it as well. And I think that that smoky texture or personality from the benzoin marries the incense that is in the heart of this fragrance. So it's smoky, it's incensey, it's really rich and deep and viscous and thick, and that amber accord is so beautifully done. I truly love amber fragrances, but this one really, sort of takes things to the next level. This is beautifully done, quite majestic. If I'm being honest, I love the landscape that it paints. But you do also have some spices, you have some pepper, you have, I think I saw geranium in the note breakdown too. I could be totally wrong about that, but there really isn't anything bright about this fragrance. There's no citrus, there's no kalone, there's no aquatic notes, there's nothing bright or vivid or animated about this fragrance. It's funny because I was looking online very briefly, and some people were comparing this one to Opus 7 by Amouage from the Library Collection. Now, that fragrance is composed by Alberto Morillas, who I think is a master perfumer. He is a master perfumer. I think he's one of the best. And that fragrance is definitely on the smoky, dark, herbal, and aromatic side of things. And the reason for that is because it contains an ingredient known as cypriol. There's a little bit of that happening in this fragrance too, but I think there's also a nice balance of patchouli. So it's green, but in a couple different directions of green, right? So it's not entirely cypriol. It's not, I don't get any fir balsam or pine or anything like that. But I love just how dark and smooth. And there's actually also a touch of sweetness in here as well. And for a while, I thought I was getting something similar to like a Leighton Exclusif by Parfum de Marly. So I was getting some darker personalities from this fragrance as well. But really what is sitting at the crux of this composition is this beautifully done amber accord. It has a nice balance of sweet, not overly sweet. You don't get any vanilla. I mean, it doesn't smell like a gourmand at all, but it's really spicy, green, earthy, and it does have some really wonderful characteristics that will put you in the mindset of some darker ambery fragrances on the market. What amber fragrance you want to compare it to doesn't really matter. This fragrance is unique at the end of the day. And that's one thing that I've come to notice about Alghabra fragrances, is that when they pursue a particular DNA, they do it forcefully, right? So their fragrances are not wispy and ephemeral. They're quite long lasting, and they really make a bold presence on the skin. This is by far one of the darkest Alghabra fragrances that I've encountered in my personal collection. I am a fan of this fragrance. I look forward to spending more time with it. I've had it in my possession for a couple of weeks now, but I'm certainly looking forward to spending more time with this fragrance, especially as the months continue to be quite cold out until like spring, even late spring, to be honest with you. That's when it starts to warm up a bit. In any case, Istanbul Soul, try this fragrance if you can. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. I love it. Let's go ahead and finish things off with my overall assessment. So first up, in terms of the uniqueness and the overall smell, this perfume certainly has some ambery tendencies. It does go in a bit of a dark direction, and it does have some really nice, warm, genial characteristics about it. But at the end of the day, I think it has enough of that darkness in there with the black pepper and the spices and the patchouli and all these other things that make it very exotic and charismatic at the same time. Really quite majestic and opulent too. In terms of the longevity, you can expect about 10 hours on your skin. Like I said, this is one of the strongest, if not the strongest, Alghabra fragrances that I have in my collection. And I think I have 9 or 10 in my collection. This is the strongest one. Projection, amazing for the first hour and a half to 2 hours of application. It radiated within an arm's length. Didn't even become an elbow's length scent until hour 7, 7.5. Skin scent right around hour 10 or 11. Really good performance from this one. In terms of the versatility, perfectly unisex, I would say. I think this one would cater to somebody who's a little bit older and thus a little bit more experienced when dealing with niche fragrances. Perfect for the colder weather, perfect for a formal scenario. In terms of the presentation, I really do like the box, the postcard, the graphic that's on the inside of the sticker here. The cap clicks into place very nicely with the logo embossed on the top of the cap, and a heavy bottle as well. Really nice attention to detail. My final verdict on this fragrance is it's a gorgeous amber fragrance. If you are a fan of amber fragrances, you don't mind them being on the spicy, medicinal, dark side of things. You want a fragrance that's really going to come across rather bold and gregarious. You don't want something very smooth and subtle and quiet and aloof, but rather something that is very loud without being obnoxious, of course. Check out Istanbul Soul by Alghabra. It's an amazing fragrance. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate your viewership. Hey, You don't have to commit to a blind buy. You know I don't recommend blind buys, but you can get a sample or a decant at maxaroma.com. They're amazing. All of the links are going to be down below. If you enjoyed this video, please do consider supporting the channel by subscribing to it, hit the bell, and give it a thumbs up. Love you guys. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.